everybody. Fantastic interview today with Tim Cook, not of Apple, Tim Cook of hockey, as we're going to call him, who's recently written a book titled Youth Sports, How to Play the Game. We're going to go through some really actionable items and discussions today about how to approach youth hockey in general, everything from mentality to skills coaches to, AAA, AA, elite, tier one stuff, and also Tim's journey in the game, which has really been eye-opening in terms of how he now approaches the game as a coach, an award-winning coach at that, and someone who played at the highest levels of hockey. It's really a great episode. I say that every week, and I mean it, but it's just another one. I'm so thankful to be part of this show. Also, if you haven't already, check out our new show called Ride to the Rink. Most episodes are 3 to 5 minutes long. We built this one for your kids. So if you haven't listened to it already, check it out. We just go through really consumable, kind of bite-sized topics for your kids to listen to on the ride to the rink in a few minutes. We're really trying to service everybody we can on this show to use hockey as a vehicle for their growth as human beings. And thank you, as always, for all the support. So let's jump into the episode with Tim Cook on Our Kids Play Hockey. Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias, and I'm joined by two parents who also happen to be award-winning podcasters and people, Mike Benelli and Christy Casciano-Burns. And our guest today, Tim Cook, played at the Hotchkiss School at the turn of the century when he was invited to the USA National Team Development Program before heading to the Omaha Lancers of the USHL. And in 2003, he became a draft pick for the Ottawa Senators and spent the 4 years following playing for the University of Michigan, where he won multiple awards in the academic and humanitarian space. Following college, Tim spent time in Europe and the United Kingdom with the Belfast Giants before coming back stateside in 2013 when he spent time working for the New York Islanders and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Today, Tim is an educator and youth hockey coach and was named the 2019 New Jersey Interscholastic Ice Hockey League Coach of the Year with the Montclair Kimberly Academy. That was a mouthful, but I'm glad I said it. He recently wrote a book, Youth Sports, How to Play the Game, a family guidebook, which is a fantastic book that helps those involved with hockey develop as people as much as players, something we wholeheartedly believe in on this show. Can't wait to dive into that. Tim, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to talk with you all and talk about an important topic. And, not just in hockey. I know your guys' what you all are preaching is applicable to every single sport and really every single parent. So I'm jacked up to be here.
Hey, we're jacked up to have you, Tim. And I'll tell you, looking through your book, we're not going to have enough time to cover all the topics we want to cover because every single chapter in your book could be an episode of this show. I really mean that. But before we dive into the book, you've had quite a hockey journey. And I want to make sure we dive into that because growing up in New Jersey at the turn of the century was a really interesting time for the game. There's a lot of rule changes. The game tactically changed a lot. What do you think helped you find success in getting to college and some of the other accolades in the game that you found?
You know what? It's interesting. I talk about it in the book a little bit, but I think being a late bloomer, as they say, really helped me because I didn't have any of the craziness of tier one until I was a second year Bantam. So until I was about, 14, 15, I was just playing. I was a decent player, but was nothing special. So I think that allowed me to really develop my skills and not get caught up in where am I in the landscape. I didn't even know the landscape existed, let alone where I was in it. So it really helped me. My mom didn't put any pressure on me in terms of that. So and I was tall, so that helped. And Lee, you alluded to it back in the day. If you were a tall D man who could skate, right. You were going to get looked at. So that's what really helped me. And then I had a really good coach, a coach named Todd Drevich, who was my first tier one coach, who was the first one probably who was like, no, you could play at a high level. And so, then I got really lucky. The timing really worked out for me. I went to Hotchkiss. The coach didn't know who I was. I literally walked on campus and didn't know who I was. And then I was two senior defensemen didn't play that year. So me and another freshman, Mike Gershon, a good New Jersey player, were the only two freshmen on the team. And then, like you said, then I got looked at for the national team. And then I was like, oh, okay, I'm actually I can really maybe play here in college, because my dream was always just to play in boarding school and then see what happened. My brother applied to boarding schools as a goalie. So I think that the fact that I didn't have the pressure that I think some of our kids have today really, really, really gave me time to develop and not worry about any of the things that I couldn't control. Because if I was worried about that when I was 13 or 14, I don't think I would have had the career I had. Yeah, so I think time was a benefit to me.
And now that you've seen how hockey has changed, I bet that was the impetus for writing this book.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think it's just that you all talk about this all the time, right? You all see it, so I'm preaching to the choir, but I'll do it anyway. It's so monetized, it's so hyper focused, it's so intense. You know, it was intense when we were coming up, right? But I'm 39, so but it was more regional, and you know, obviously social media wasn't a thing, the internet was barely a thing. So now it's just like it's super super focused on the kids, and the kids are aware of it, which is the problem. You know, back in the day, then maybe even if the parents were a little bit off kilter, when we were coming up, maybe the kids weren't as aware of it. You know, they were in their own bubble. But now they see the rankings, they see the chat boards, they see the social media stuff, they see all this nonsense, to be honest, and it affects them negatively. So I wanted to put down my thoughts on paper. Hopefully, it's beneficial to people, and they can see like there's another way to think about this, and also like it's not really a theoretical or a moral take on it. We could talk about all the time like what hockey should be, what youth sports should be, but it is what it is at the end of the day. So parents, I think, really need to arm themselves and help their kids arm themselves to correctly look at this and really you know, like take it a holistic view. Like, what are we doing this for, and what's important about it? And then if we make it fantastic, then you know, you made it. And if you don't, what lessons can we take from this to really, you know, take the benefits of sports, which is why we're all here, right? Why we all care about this thing.
Yeah, it's so funny, you know, that you just mentioned about your kind of being naive, you know, going through the system. And I think, I mean, honestly, I think everyone in that age group up until maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, is really naive about all of that. I mean, up until, I mean, I don't remember even coaching youth hockey in basically the 2000s, you know, of where I had to worry about who was playing who and what rankings this person was, and did they have to go to a showcase event, an exposure program. And I, you know, just this past weekend, you know, I'm watching a 2014s, right? So they're 8 and under kids, and in a tournament. It's May, by the way, and when we're doing this, it's May in a tournament. And the stress level of the parents, and I was just there for another thing. I was there to meet somebody at the rink, and I'm watching the stress levels of these 4 different teams that are in the finals of a Sunday afternoon spring tournament, and the amount of stress and the amount of like going outside, taking a breather, going out to their car, coming back, walking around the rink, like huffing and puffing. And it really is a, you know, and you're absolutely right that we can't put the horse back in the barn, but the best thing we can do is use books like yours to educate ourselves, really, because I think the problem, like, that I've always seen with our podcast is, and you said, in what triggered my thought process was, you're saying, oh, I'm preaching to the choir, and the problem is we all are preaching to the choir. It's like the people that need to hear this or should hear it and would benefit it the most are the people that don't feel it applies to them. And I think that gap, though, is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, the whole idea of my kid making it has changed. Like I think my parents wanted me to make it, that I was alive at 18 and a good friend, and that I went and maybe got an opportunity to go to college and move on with my life. Like, that wasn't, you know, that was making it. Yeah. Right. I survived, you know, and I think now making it is this, you know, ROI on what you do with your kids at 6 and 7 and 8 years old. And I think what your book was able to do was parse a lot of that. And I know Lee will get to the different pieces, but, you know, parse it out, that it's not just one big problem. Like, it's all little things. And if we can take some pieces of that, maybe we can make our children's, you know, kind of experience, maybe not less intense, but maybe better for them to see that there's a bigger picture around, you know, leaving the rink and coming into
right. And you're absolutely right. And I see it all the time with parents just obsessed with trying to figure out how to crack the code to raise the champion children that they know they can do. It's become an obsession with parents. And Tim, that's why I'm so glad this book is such a great guide, because it tells parents, stop. Look at what your kid's potential is, be realistic, enjoy this time of the youth sports, because it goes so quickly. And if you are obsessed with that, I'm going to raise a champion children, you really are not living in the moment and enjoying what your children are doing every day on a day-to-day basis.
Bravo. Couldn't, I mean, that's the whole theme of the book, what you both just said. And you know, the people, and the crazy thing is, like, the parents who are struggling through this, and I don't want to, like, you know, the same way that we've all been there, right? So we don't want to, like, castigate them, but you just want to shake them and just be like, exactly what you said, like, you're losing the most important time of your life. You're losing the most beautiful thing of your life. Like, your child enjoying themselves, being active, being with, you know, people their age, camaraderie, all that type of thing, working together, collaboration, taking criticism from a coach and getting better, like, beautiful, right? And it's we're allowing it to get toxic, right? And sometimes we're a part of that. And that's the scary thing, is when, you know, we all catch ourselves. That's why I wanted to write the book too, like, as a reminder, almost to myself, like, what's important, you know, what matters in this whole thing. Because I get like caught up in a New Jersey high school hockey game, and then I'm like, whoa, like, what's going on here? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
we all do.
Yeah, we all do, right? And like, the reality is, like, statistically speaking, you know, none of those kids are going to play in the NHL. And even if they are, what really matters, right?
Right.
And Mike, to your point, like, sports is such a beautiful teacher, right? So my mom, I know, wanted me to, I remember I was talking about it in the book, like, I had a spring league team, we were 0-20, and the Montclair team, the Blues, right? We had a spring league team that was in it, but they came in later, and I committed to this other team, and I wanted to quit. I was like 12 or something. My mom was like, no, you're in it. Like, you told them you're in it. Like, we're going to take our lumps this spring, and your friends are going to win the championship. And then that's it. It was the best lesson I could ever have. Right. Because that was it. You don't quit. Like, you give your commitment, you don't quit. It's going to be painful. Make the best of it. It is what it is. It's going to be over. And then you move on. But yeah, I think, and again, to Mike and to Lita, what you're talking about, like, the segments of it, it can be so convoluted, but when you break it down and be like, what am I doing this for? What value can I get out of it? What lesson can I teach my kid? Right. Because a spring league tournament, you know, in May, and people are getting,
well, you got to say it right. Spring league, super AAA elite showcase tournament for the gifted. Make sure you call it what it is.
Yeah, how many scouts were there, right? I'm sure the NHL scouts were there with their like.
Right. You said it, Tim, in the book, quadruple A.
Yeah, it's nonsense. And, like, you know, what are the most valuable things we have in the world, right? Time, right? Our families, our finances, which can be used for whatever we think is important. And we're wasting these things, I think, sometimes because we're getting blinded by other people who don't know what they're talking about, right?
Tim, I do want to say this too, and this is actually a point I feel like I need to keep reiterating on this show. I am a host on this show, and I have to be reminded of this mostly daily, right? It's one of the reasons I'm so thankful for this show. But again, Christy's been through it with both her kids. Mike is in the middle of it. But even with my own kids, I have to be reminded daily, just, hey, remember what this is, right? Now, I'm a pretty intense person, but I'm thinking, if I sit on this panel every week, if I'm feeling that, you know, the audience is feeling it too. And that's why I think conversations like this are extremely important, because we're not having these conversations. We always say preaching to the choir. We got to get the choir to sing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And you know, what's funny too is, and I was thinking about it when Mike was talking, is that, like, everybody learns this. So but it usually after your first kid, right? So it's the parents with their first kid who are squirts or peewees, and their kids starting to show some talent, you know, they're the worst, because they don't know what's, you know, the strings that are being pulled. You know, they haven't seen the curtain being pulled. Whereas when a person's on their third or fourth kid, they're the easy parent, because they're like, I know what this whole thing is, right? I know what this whole game is. I know it's important. But yeah, we all get caught up, especially, you know, even loved ones I have who I, like, gave the book to, or then telling me, oh, we're going to, like, I'm like, why are you going to, like, that tournament? Why are you spending $10,000 on this tournament? Unless it's for like a family reason and it's a vacation and you're doing cool. You have to spend your money on something. But if you think your kid's going to get seen at 9 years old, he or she is not. It's just not going to happen. Yeah.
I think so. From my perspective of being in the the industry, is I think what's happening is, and I see it in baseball and certainly in lacrosse, and we see it all over the place, like the Cooperstown type of mentality of how do I get there. I don't think it's so much that these parents think that like this is the ticket. I do feel though that they feel that by putting him in these situations early, they can have more control over molding the player into a pro. But then when you talk to pros, none of them got there that way. like they may have played on those teams, and certainly, I mean, there's no doubt that over the last 5, 6, 8 years that you're seeing players get into the NHL that only play hockey. I mean, I know the multi-sport athlete thing is a nice thing to say, but the fact is these kids they are multi-sport ability. I mean, they could pick up, like, they're the type of kids that could do anything and be good at it, but they don't, because hockey now has become so centralized in singular, performance. And so is lacrosse, and so is soccer. And so, but I think the formula now is becoming, if I can get my kid in as long as possible, and I can hope that they get through the gauntlet of all the other kids that think they're that kid, and at the end, my kid can pop out of that grouping of elite hockey players.
At what price?
Yeah.
Well, but see, this is the thing. I think statistically we have to look at this and say, what is the price? And I think the problem is the shining one, the one that comes through. We don't see all the other stuff behind it, but the one that gets through and signs a contract and gets drafted or goes to the USHL or the BCHL or the major juniors or the NCAA, that one person pops out, and nobody wants to talk about the kids that didn't. Yeah. And it doesn't matter because all of us think our kid is that kid. Mm-hmm. That's the kid that my kid is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where, and it's very, I mean, I don't think we've even hit the top of the pyramid of how bad this is yet.
Yeah.
Because you said it earlier that usually, we equate this as it's the people that don't know any better. It's the first time parents. It's the dad and mom that never played a sport in their whole life. Mm-hmm. And, they come out and they say, well, I'm going to buy my son an opportunity to play pro hockey, which is crazy. But it's now the problem is it's the people that are established, the people that have played, the people that have a voice that can say no, but they don't, because they the money is so big right now that they could just hang the shingle up and they're going to get it. And I guess the answer is always, well, if I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it.
Yes.
And it's so disheartening to watch people at the highest levels of hockey and great hockey people, like great hockey minds, not stopping the train. And they could.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Mike. I think the people at the highest levels aren't taking advantage of these people because they don't have to, right? They're actually the coaches and scouts and the commentators and whoever. But I agree with you. I think that they do have a responsibility to call it out more and try to be change leaders, because there are, and the only people I talk about in the book who I really, slander, but I think it's well-deserved, are people like you're talking about who are monetizing this, who know better, right? Like they know better, and maybe they had a little bit of success, but now they're like, all right, I'm going to try to eat off of it for running this tournament where a kid gets on the ice for, 10, 15 minutes per game for 4 games, and they're charging this much, and they know they're not developing, right? And they're calling it all these different things. So they're running these camps, and are the kids actually getting better? Are they getting development? Or is it about, let's get as many kids on the ice as possible. Let's really get our margins up, right? Or the worst is the family advisors, right? So the family advisors and I think there's some kids who need a family advisor. Like John Tavares needed a family advisor at 13 years old, right? Austin Matthews needed a family advisor.
Future Hall of Fame NHL players, right?
You're a first rounder, you need an advisor. And
totally
the
agree with that.
is you actually don't need an advisor because you're going to get drafted whether or not you have an advisor, which is the hilarious. It's like the Kardashians don't need to pay for clothes or could buy anything they wanted, but now they get everything for free, right? It's like the people that actually are getting advisors or should maybe don't need them because they're going to be first round picks anyway. They can play wherever they want. They're just the best players in the world. But the people that, I have players around that will get advisors and I'll be like, in my head, why are you getting an advisor? Like, you're a club hockey player, maybe, and Lee, like, club hockey is good hockey, like very good hockey. There's junior hockey players. There's kids who could be D3 players. It's fast, it's good, it's physical. But why you don't need an advisor? You don't need to pay somebody $200, $300 a month, So I think that those people doing that are like, I think it's really, really, really shady and the wrong thing to do and polluting a beautiful thing that we have in our game. But there's so much money in it, I don't know what the answer is to it.
Well, and I think in a lot of ways, I know like the way I work too is well, maybe I need to be involved so I can help stem that a little bit. Like somebody's got to do it, right? And somebody's going there. And the problem is too, there is only that. Like there isn't house league tournaments. There isn't in-house development clinics. They and those people, they have just as much money as anybody, maybe more, because they actually have money left, is any of the elite hockey players. But the market, like, that's why I always look at it from a perspective of a rink owner. And I'm like, if I'm a rink owner, why would I want to lease AAA hockey parents that want to spend their money going across the country? They should spend their money with me.
I want to say too that it's funny. We have seen. I'm not negating your point. We have seen organizations like this, but they're looked at almost as a charity organization, like Snyder Hockey or Hockey in Harlem. They do exist, but we look at them
actually
like,
the best program. Which are actually the best model to be in.
Yeah, and like again, we've seen, Tim. We've had leadership from both of those organizations on, and they run their organizations incredibly well. And Mike, as you said, from a business standpoint, because people said, they don't make money. They do better. They do better, and they get kids to college for academics. Imagine that, right? And then hockey on top of it. And Tim, I wanted to bring this up too. You said this earlier in the episode. And you reminded me of this. You and I are the same age. And when you and I were growing up, AA was the top level, right? AAA was kind of reserved for tournaments, right? And you started to see it. And then I remember when I graduated high school, that was the year after I graduated, the first junior team came to town. And I remember thinking, wow, this is weird how it's expanding. Because when I was growing up, it was you played high school, maybe you went to prep school, maybe you went to college, but we were so excited just to play hockey after high school, regardless of the level. But the same things applied. If you wanted it more than anybody else, you were going to succeed. Mm-hmm. Like, these haven't changed over the years, right? Mm-hmm. If you were willing to put the time in, you were probably going to succeed. It more than just hockey, right? There were no training aids when you and I were growing up. We had to figure it out, right? Yeah. And like you, I played B till I was probably 14 or 15. Then I sprouted, mainly because of puberty, but then I sprouted, right? And I found a love for the game that I didn't know existed. So a lot of these things, I think, give us a unique perspective as we kind of have seen both sides of this. And we talked about this on the show recently, how what we're seeing today is incredibly, incredibly talented players that don't really know the tactical side of the game at all. Mm-hmm. Right. So there's an imbalance. But look, I want to jump into the book because we have only so much time today. I've got three chapters earmarked here, but let's get through them the fastest we can. Before we even do that, everybody listening, this book is really great because it's got bite-sized chapters. There's a lot of them in there. And it's something you can read in a few minutes or for a few hours, depending on where you're at. Tim, I applaud you for that because a lot of books today are very long and grandiose. And it's like, oh, this chapter's 30 pages. And not this one. Every chapter is really consumable with really great facts and really good action items at the end. So first, a great job on that, because I think we need more things like that. Thank you. No, thank you. Right. Let's just go to chapter 30 here in the book. I have it. Christy, I got my journalism hat on. I got my little notes here. All right. Chapter 30 is titled, we were just talking about this, the use of the term elite or tier one does not truly mean that the club is top quality. All right. And I'm going to that right now because I have this earmarked, like I said.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
I
well,
got the
it's a
crazy
topic.
hockey parent one earmark because I really want to get into that.
I will. You know what? You go next. I'm on this one right now. So I'm obviously not going to read the chapter, but what I love about this, Tim, is that like I said, at the end of every chapter, excuse me, there's a little bit of an exercise, and you give these great steps for inspecting a club, which I wish more parents and teams would take. All right, and again, I'm going to tease this. If you want more, go buy the book, obviously. But it says here, step 1, if possible, ask the club leadership questions along the lines of, what is the development model? What teams are in the typical game schedule, and how often and far is travel? Do players typically ascend the entire organizational structure? These are great questions. Have many players eventually reached the higher level of sport? What is the organizational mission? Everyone should be asking that. You shouldn't be afraid to ask that. Is your player ready for that level? How are coaches sourced, retained, educated? Mike, you love that one. What is the all-in price, fee, equipment, apparel, extra clinics, travel costs? How far is the home rink? And are there penalties for absence due to school or family conflicts? That's just step 1. There's 4 steps here. Again, I don't want to give it all away, but the idea is great questions demand great answers. I'm a big believer in that. You should never join an organization without asking questions, and this man has given you the blueprint for it, for just that topic. So, Tim, let's just quickly, what was your process for kind of coming to those conclusions? Because everything written in this book is based on something. It's not just the top of your head.
Yeah. So, and Lee, like you were talking about, and everybody on the call, like I've seen it as a player, and then I was a hockey director for the Pittsburgh Penguins Elite, which is a AAA program in Pittsburgh, under the Penguins banner. It runs out of UPMC, which is a Penguins practice facility. It's a great program. And now I'm a coach, right? So I've seen it from all different angles. I had a family advisor, I had an agent. So I've really been able to look at it from different perspectives and be like, what do I wish I had known? What do I wish I would have asked? And those are things that I wish I would have asked. Like I didn't know when I went to Omaha in the USHL, I didn't know that there were scratches. I had no idea. So I showed up, right? And there's 8D, and I'm going around and this guy's a D, this guy's a D, this guy's a D. All right. And then, I was a younger player, I was 17. So, I played like 45 out of 60 games. Right. So, but I remember the first time I got scratched, I'm like, what am I, I'm sitting in the stands.
Not,
you know what I mean?
Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
We're in Nebraska.
Right, exactly. Right? Yeah, we're in Nebraska. Oh my God, I'm in Nebraska. And that was a big thing that I wish my mom had known, and we had asked and been like, all right, yeah, you're recruiting me, but like, where am I at in your depth chart? Like, am I going to play every game? Am I going to play a lot? Am I going to be on the power play? We were just like, yeah, we're in. Let's go. It's they're turning out Division I players. So, but I wanted to see it from a youth perspective and be able to put it into a way like you were talking about, Lee, like a way that parents could actually be like, all right, what's important to me? Right. Write that down. What's important to my family? What I want my kid to know. And then does this organization align with those values or not? Right. And not just get caught up in like, they've got the best gear. They've got a super cool brand. They've got a jackets. They won the championship at this tournament or that tournament. It's like, what does any of that mean? What does any of that matter? Right. So that's what I really wanted people, and exactly like you mentioned, like the actionable items.
Can I, as a follow-up, this is actually for everybody, right? If you're afraid to ask those questions, or you ask those questions and the person you're asking is offended, you kind of have your answer.
Yep.
That's a huge red flag, right? Now, Mike is a huge proponent of this. He wants people to ask those questions, right?
Yeah.
And yes, they're mildly uncomfortable questions, but who cares, right? Like those questions worth asking are.
Right. And we have seen that on our college hockey when we were, when Sophia was being recruited, and we would go to these different programs and different colleges, and my husband would always ask the tough questions, and they would just stop talking and just turn to me and wouldn't answer it. And then John's like, okay, we're done with this, because they wouldn't answer his tough questions, just ignored them. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask. And if they're shy about answering it, those red flags should be going up. There's something wrong there. Yeah.
Well, I think the best programs now you're seeing too that are taking this type of advice are coming out with that information, and it's front, there, and center. They're not afraid of it. They're not hiding it. They want to actually use it as an advantage over other programs. Like you should say, we have 85% of the kids that come into our 8U program graduate from our 16U program. Did you know that we're not gonna, we're not gonna change our uniforms every year? We're gonna, whenever we do a team skate discount. We do, our ice time is allocated fairly, and it rotates through a basis of not what A, B, or C team you're on, but based off of age group and based off of availability. Like all these little things can be very clear and transparent in this day and age. It's like, you could have 18,000 web pages for free, basically, on your website. Make these things available, let parents see that checklist, and that's the program you want to go after. Again, if you're not just looking for a letter, and you're not looking for, I don't know if anybody asks, like, because they're not going to post that, right? We're an organization that will play the most away games of any organization in the country, and we will be on 4 planes. Like, nobody's saying that, right? Because people would
the
go,
same team.
Well, that's kind of weird. I'm not going to do that. Why would I go on 4 plane trips with my kid? I don't even go on vacation with my kid. Like,
Right.
So where can we, those are all great questions. And I think the red flag piece is just like we would do if we went to a school. Like, right? We ask a school, like, how many of your kids graduate from this school?
That's a great analogy.
Oh, that's great. Maybe that's probably not great.
We have a 20% graduation rate.
Oh, good.
Exactly. You need to look at the fine print and don't be clouded when you got to have a clear vision, because they're going to throw a lot of bells and whistles at you, man. They're going to sell their program and tell you everything that you want to hear.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to, hey, well, how many games do you play? And do you change, is this going to, how much is this going to cost me? Ask.
Yeah. And I think exactly to everybody's point, like, I couldn't say it any clearer. Like, if the person's offended by the question, then there's a reason, right? So, and I think the only question that I would say, like, don't ask, or it's not even, you can ask any question, right? I, as a coach, you can ask me any question, because you're not demanding it. So even if you're saying, like, where does my player fit in the depth chart? Like, are they going to be a first line player? Are they going to be on the power play? You're not saying, I want my kid to be on the power play. You're just saying, like, things change. It's all good. It changes. But looking at who you have coming in, is my player going to play? Because if they're not going to play, they're not going to develop. So that's a good question to ask, right? To be like, do you think they're going to be slotted in? And then they have to perform, and they have to play well, and they have to be coachable, and all those types of things, right? But yeah, and like you were talking about it, Chrissy or Lee, I can't remember who said it, but it's like school, right? Like, I teach, right? So, and I teach at an independent school, private school, and parents are well aware that they're paying so that they need, if you as a teacher got to answer questions. You don't have to tell them what they want to hear, but you have to be there to communicate and be like, this is what I'm going to provide for your child. This is what I think is important. This is how they're going to develop as a student. And it's the same thing with these programs. Like, we're paying, we're paying tens of thousands of dollars at times. You're allowed to have these conversations for sure.
And you should. And just on that note, just a side note, we always say here, we really wish more teams, and you do see this in some prep schools and places where higher education is important. I wish teams would post more where kids went to college, whether they played or not. Just the academic success. We have seen this in Snyder hockey. We have seen this in Hockey in Harlem. I'm sure at MKA where you teach, it's very important, because that is a very good school that prides itself on education. Look, there's just final thought on this. There's a great book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game. All right. And I don't think enough hockey organizations take the approach, which is make your organization last forever if you can. And the way you do that is through honesty, through integrity. And I think if more programs would take that approach, honestly take that approach of, like, we're not for everybody. This is exactly what we are. I think not only will they make more money, but they'll actually last longer. They'll make more success. A child developing into a better human being and hopefully a hockey player is a success, no matter what they make. I don't care if it's a B team or the NHL. That is the success. We have completely lost sight of that, unfortunately. And it's devastating.
Lee, I like what you're saying there too, because I think there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with AAA hockey for the right kids and the right families, right? In the right situation. I think it's great. I think that the sad thing is when you see a kid who should be in A hockey playing AAA because they needed to fill out that roster and they needed that tuition, right? And that kid's getting their head taken off, right? They're never making a play. They are completely shell-shocked in the game.
Right. They might quit.
They're sitting on the bench. It's like, what's the point of this, right? But for the kids who are ready for it, I think it's a beautiful thing. I think let's go. Let's be, steel sharpens steel. Let's be challenged. But we've all seen it, like how watered down is AAA hockey. It's disgusting, right? There should be depending on the state, like 10, 15, 20 teams, maybe, but there's 50 teams in
Right.
certain states. They shouldn't be there.
Yeah, but and I think that's the buyer, right? The buyer needs to demand those answers. If I'm the buyer, if I'm the parent, and I have a coach. What I love, like the last couple of years, I've been really fortunate to have my kids play for coaches that are very honest. Like just like, okay, where they fit in? Oh, they this is who they are, and I don't get offended by that. I'm like, well, I trust. So I use the analogy, like if I trust you enough to go to your tryout and want to play on your team, then I should trust you enough to give me an opinion about how you think who my kid is. Like, so if you're going to prep school, you're going to college, that coach is going to sit down and say, it's not in their best interest to tell you you're going to be their star player because you're not. Like you look around and go, well, I'm not the star player. I see these other guys are all drafted. Like I know I'm not your star player. But if you could say, hey, listen, here's our path. Here's what we're going to do for you. Here's how we're going to watch you and mentor you and be with you. And then you human being, you are going to have to now drive this, but we're going to give you the path to get there. But you have to do the work.
Mike,
when parents can hear that, and then it becomes a partnership of player, parent, and coach, and that's how true development happens. Not the other way around. Not like, well, I paid you to make my kid better, so why isn't he a AAA player? I'm like, I don't know. You're
Mike,
you're 5'3" and your wife is 5'2". Here's
a mentality that I no, it was good. Here's a mentality. I remember my attitude, and I know a lot of people share this, was I didn't want to be the star player when I joined the team. I actually wanted to be on the bottom rung, but when I left the team, I wanted to be the star player. That was always my drive, right? Like I want to be one of the bottom players when I start, and by the end of the season, I'm going to outwork everybody and be one of the top players every year, right? I mean, outside maybe some spring and summer fun leagues, that's what I wanted because I knew I was going to grow. Mm-hmm. So again, we've got to leave behind the status of AAA and being able to. I see parents. What team did your kid make? Oh, he only made the A team. Like that's when I was growing up, that was awesome. You made an A team, right? Yeah. You only made the A team. Your verbiage is important. I proudly say both my kids are on B teams this year, and they should be because they're developing. I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
Well, how about the fact that they're active and they're not sitting on a couch? Like, I mean, the whole idea that they're up and out and doing something, and there's somebody inspiring them to come to the rink, develop, get better, want to be with their teammates, have all the things that Tim was just talking about learning all those other qualities of being in a locker room. That's why we all put our kids in sports. Right. I can't imagine. Like, I don't. Unless you're, King Williams, right? You're not putting your kid in sport for an end game. But we're all guilty of like, okay, what is the end game? I don't know what the end game is. My end game is to get through the weekend and then to know my kid just loved being where he was, and then he didn't get bullied, and he didn't bully somebody, and he loved being around the people he's around, and that there was a coach in there that was a true mentor, great role model, and a person that put a smile on his face. Like that to me is, and then all the other stuff happens. All the other stuff takes care of itself. If you inspire kids, if they have it in their ability, like Lee was saying, if you're good enough, the adage in 1930 and today, if you're good enough, you're going to get found. If you have the passion and the drive, you're going to succeed. Whether you succeed at the pinnacle of the sport is all based off of so many different factors that none of us can control, that you just get handed to. And then but then you have to put your kids in the right environment to blossom. Now, what do they say? Like if a flower is dying, you don't kill the flower. You cultivate the soil. Like you just
environment.
You change. You just so. And I think that's what most parents don't do. They keep trying to put their kid in. Well, if they play AAA, if I could just get them on that AAA team, they could be a AAA player.
It's never about the kid, right? It's about
it always. It very often, I don't want to say always, but more often than not, it goes the other way. The divide becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's so sad that parents like the best thing I love hearing is when I have a 16-year-old player and the dad says, "Oh, well, my kid played on that team when he started with that team." I go, when? When he was 6, he was on that AAA, Little Caesars franchise team. Yeah, but he's 16 now. He hasn't been on that team. He hasn't been on that team in 10 years.
Yeah.
So that was the pinnacle of their hockey life. And to me, it's like, well, let's tone down the levels and then put your kid in a place where they can flourish. And I haven't seen it yet, that a kid that's able to flourish is going to flourish.
Mike, I like to think I haven't reached my pinnacle yet.
Keep going. Yeah.
As a hockey player.
Keep going.
All right. So I want to get into this. We've all established we're all big fans of transparency, which is great. We are not fans of something that Tim addresses in chapter 25. And I'm going to just say the title because it's just brilliant. You ready? If you cannot spot the crazy parent in the stands, it is because you are that person. Drop the mic, Tim, on that title. Yes.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you.
Talk to me.
Yeah, so I stole that from the poker adage, right? If you're at the poker table and you can't spot the sucker, you're the sucker. And it's crazy. Like, you'll talk to some parents and they'll say, "Oh, can you believe that John Smith over there is talking about this and wants to go on this, all these different tournament teams, and is saying that their son should be on the power play." And in my head, I'm going, "Yeah, you do that. Like, you do that all the time, right? You're the one who's always saying the coach is making a mistake. My son's or daughter's getting politics. Why they didn't make it." Yeah, I think it's important, right? Like we said, to be transparent and to be introspective. We all need to, and we've talked about at the beginning of the podcast that, we all get caught up in the moment because we're humans, right? And we're all competitive. And why y'all have had success in your lives is because you're competitive and you work hard and you want to win and you want to be successful. Those things are great, right? But like all things, they can become negative if we drink too much of it, right? Everything in moderation. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's important for parents to really analyze what they're doing at the rink, who they're hanging out with, right? Are they if you hang out with 4 people who are doing one thing, you're going to be the 5th doing that thing. So if you're at all engaged in that activity, right, talking about the coach or other players or other parents or whatever, it's negative, right? We breed into that and it infects us, right? We can't really be around that stuff without getting infected. So, like
it can become very toxic. You're right.
Totally. And, you can only fight it for so long until we all read I'm talking bad about somebody else. Why I don't want to be that person. So yeah, I think, and we've all seen it, right? We've seen the videos of parents fighting in the stands and people have died in the stand, fighting in the parking lot. And you're you're fighting over a 10-year-old hockey game.
And not just videos. I mean, I've seen it in person.
Yeah.
What's also helpful is at the end of the chapter, you've got an exercise that parents can walk through to be the change that they want to see. Super helpful.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do with every chapter. Almost every chapter is to be all right, here's my take on it, right? Here's what I see. Is not perfect. It's just my perspective. And then here's how you can incorporate this into your life if you think it's important. And if you don't, disregard it and keep moving. But hopefully they take away a few things that can be all right, this is how I can actually help my child be successful in youth hockey and youth sports at large.
Right. And I think parents don't realize sometimes your baggage gets attached to the kid. And I have seen teams where a kid is on the bubble, whether or not to make a team, and the coaches will say, "Oh, but those parents, let's take the other kid because the other kid's parents are just too much to handle." And we don't want that. We don't want that on our team. And you could actually end up hurting your kid, especially if you've developed a reputation of being loud and obnoxious and not helpful. You could cost your kid an opportunity to play on a really good team because of your behavior.
Yeah, we see it all the time. I played with a guy at Michigan, Chad Clark, who's the assistant coach in the national team. And then my teammate at Michigan, Brandon Norado, is now the head coach at the University of Michigan. And I was talking about a couple of players, and that's the second question they asked. The first question they asked is can they skate? Can they play? Are they a difference maker? And then the second one was, what's the family like? What's the parent like? Because you're totally right, Chrissy. There's so many players. So if it's close and one family's great family, integrity, good people, will just show up and support the team, never say a cross word at you no matter what, even if you scratch the kid, or they want you, right? They want you to discipline the kid in an effective and age-appropriate way, because they know what you're doing for them is so valuable. Not saying why are you sitting down my kid? I'm sitting him
exactly.
Pass the puck and he doesn't listen and he's negative attitude. You know what I mean? So,
right. So yeah, just another incentive, parents. If you think your behavior doesn't matter, it does.
It matters.
Yeah.
Scouts are watching you.
Get factored in.
Scouts are watching you. If your kid is good enough to get scouted, they're going to look at you too.
I'm going to say this too. This is something I've learned coaching. It's something I learned from psychology. Kids crave discipline. They will never ask for it ever. Sometimes they will challenge it, but they crave it. Right. And I think the best coaches and parents work together to understand that. And as we've discussed on this show a million times, kids will mostly listen to not their parents when it comes to that. Right. It's always easier to coach someone else's kid than your own kid because they naturally fight it. But, I think that, Christy, to your point, that cooperation between parent and coach, and a coach knowing, hey, I can talk this. Look, I see this all the time with my kids' teachers. Right. And again, Tim, you understand this, right? Like when I can't tell you the relief on a teacher's face when I have like my parent teacher conference and they can see, no, we actively want to help you do whatever you need to do to make sure my kid is doing his work disciplined or her work. And they just sit back like, thank you for saying that, because so many parents blame the teacher. Well, why aren't you doing a better job?
Easy conference. I love that, Lee. You can be in my class any day. Your kids,
right? Well, my wife would love to move back up to northern Jersey, but we're still in Philly for now. Look, we got about 10 minutes left. I got 2 more chapters. I hope we can get through both of them. One of them is a hot topic on this show, and then the last one's going to be about mental fitness, which I know is a top topic for everybody here. But chapter 42, and I'm actually going to read a little bit here. It says, a skills coach cannot make a player score more goals or want it more. And the passage that I highlighted here, and I think everyone should listen to this. The real benefit of a skill coach, in my opinion, is identifying strengths and enhancing those while trying to turn weaknesses into manageable deficiencies. That is so true. And I'm going to use an NHL example of this. There's a player some of you might have heard called Alex Ovechkin. He's a pretty good player. He's probably going to be the greatest goal scorer in the history of the NHL. He really already is. And I remember, Tim, I'm sure you remember this too, Mike, Christie, his first few years in the game, he did okay, but the Capitals were horrible. The team didn't start winning until a coach came in and just let Ovechkin play his game. And then suddenly the Caps were a playoff team every year after that because they just let him play. They didn't try and hold him back, didn't try and have him play only D. Again, when they won the cup, he was playing two-way hockey. I'll say that. But my point is that you want to enhance what's great about your player, not just focus on what's bad. Mm-hmm. All right. And I would love for you to dive into that for a minute, because I think that's just great advice.
Yeah. They say drummers got to drum, right? So
that's in the book too. I read it.
There's nothing wrong with being a grinder. There's nothing wrong with being a very good penalty kill specialist. Not everyone's going to be a goal scorer. I was certainly not, right? And if I had a skills coach who was like, oh, we're going to work with you over the summer and we're going to turn you into a power play specialist at the NCAA Division I level and then in high levels of pro, they would have been lying, because that's not possible, right? So there's just certain things you cannot teach, in my opinion. You can't teach goal scoring. You can teach where to go on the ice. You can teach how to get open. You can teach how to have a harder shot. You can teach how to get your head up when you shoot. But that nose for the net that we see players have, you either have that or you don't. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have it, that's all good, right? Work on what you can actually achieve and get better at to be a player that your coach wants to put you in.
So some great quick examples of this. I remember growing up, man, I wanted to be Eric Lindros. The problem is I'm not 6'5" and 220 pounds, and I was never going to be, but I could pass the puck. And I had a great coach really help me get great at becoming a playmaker, and that became my thing. Parents listening, I cannot tell you as a coach, Tim, you're going to like this, Mike, you're going to like this, Christy. I cannot tell you the value of a winger who knows how to get the puck out of the zone. Well, not just throw it out.
Hardest play in hockey.
Right. It's a skilled play that some people can do, some people can't. Passing ability, playmaking ability is you know what great goal scorers love? Someone who can pass them the puck, right? Defensive ability, understanding awareness in front of the net, reading the play. There's so many little intricate things about the game. And don't get me wrong, you have to have a lot of tools in your toolbox. You can't just be a one-play person. But the ability to see those aspects and be great. Or adversely, if you're on a team, and you have 5 great goal scorers, and that's not you, be somebody else that you're supposed to be. Yep. Be the playmaker, be the great two-way forward. You know, I remember Tim telling young kids when I was coaching in Europe, where you played too, right? My 3rd and 4th line players, well, what do you want me to do? I want you not to be a liability. I want you to be a strong defensive, offensive player where I know I can put you out and I'm not going to get scored on. And the players that understood that and dove into that role, man, they did great. Yeah. Right. The ones that said I should be a goal scorer, they didn't stay long. Yeah. And maybe they did develop into that someplace else. It wasn't going to be our team. Yeah. But that's the seed I'm trying to plant for parents, is that if you know your kid has the aptitude for something, enhance that, right? Especially if it's goal scoring, right? Like even if that's their stick. So just great advice there.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lee, I'll just say this before, before we move on to the next one, is that you see it at the higher levels, like Sam Bennett, right? We were watching the playoffs right now, the Florida Panthers, right? He was a 4th overall pick. So he's coming into the show. He's like, I'm going to be a goal scorer. I'm going to make $10 million a year. I'm going to be the all-star. He's not that for whatever reason, right? So he's adjusted his game to be he's still a skilled player. He still makes plays, but to be a more agitator, physical player, right? Bring that energy. Right. But if he tried to be that player that he thought he would be at one point, he would not be who he is, right? He could potentially not be in the NHL because he wouldn't be effective, right? So if it's good enough for Sam Bennett, who's making millions of dollars, it's good enough for your 13-year-old, right? To say like, what's my role going to be? And also at the same point, like, you were talking about development. Like, yes, I want that player to continue to try to be the better player and to work on it and to always shoot for that. But at the end of the day, you need to be realistic about what am I going to be and how can I accentuate those strengths while also like continuing to get better at the other things.
Right. And I'll say too, the greatest players probably in history have this ability to adapt. I mean, Steve Yzerman comes to my mind right away.
Yeah.
Steve Yzerman, for those who don't remember, was an amazing goal scorer, but it's when he learned from Scotty Bowman to be a two-way player that they started winning all those cups.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Michael Jordan's a great example. He's putting up 40, 50, 60 points a game when the Bulls were losing.
Yeah.
Right? Once he started playing both ways, he still put up a lot of points. They won all those championships, right? Again, Tim, in the interest of time, this is just an important chapter I have to bring up for all of us. Chapter 26, maybe the most important one we talk about today. It's titled, "Listen to what your player is telling you, even when they are not speaking. Your child's sense of worth may depend on it." And the quick passage I wanted to read, and this is so crucial, is the development of self-worth is a crucial part of maturation. If each part of our identity is not fully matured at all age-appropriate stages, it is very difficult to repair later in life. Rudolph says that the developmental theories suggest that children's sense of self-worth emerges from an internalization of the views of significant others. That's us. That's parents, that's coaches, and the people around them. We talk about self-worth, we talk about confidence, we talk about self-esteem on this show all the time. If you're not actively focused on that, I don't know what to say. You're going to have major problems. Your kid's going to have major problems. They're going to get post hockey and have major problems, or they might not even make it to the end of hockey. They might just quit. Can we just talk on that for a few minutes about how important it is to focus on a kid's self-esteem as much as their play?
Right. And how often do you talk to your kid about it without going overboard? Because you don't want to hit them over the head with all these important lessons, and you don't want it to be, they're thinking about it all the time. So what's the right balance, Tim?
Yeah, I think never miss a teachable moment, right? Never miss a teachable moment. So I think about that as a teacher and a coach, and now as a parent is like, what can my kid get out of this? But I also don't want to overload them, exactly like you said, Chrissy, because they're going to turn you out at a certain point, right? So, but there's things are going to come up that I'm going to be able to say, like, we don't act like that. That's negative. And you can never miss that because, permitting is promoting. So if you allow like bullying to go on, obviously we all know that, like the dangers of that, right? But even like little comments about other people, and you hear it and you're like, I don't want to address it because it's going to be awkward, it's going to be a pain in the neck, and then you're like, no, I have to, right? If I don't, I'm going to miss this moment, and potentially this kid's going to think that I think it's acceptable because maybe they know that I heard it. But yeah, I think, and Mike, you talked about it with the spring league tournament, right? With the parents, they're stressing out, and their kids can feel that, right? The kids can feel that. So instead of it all being a positive experience, and we're going to have a great time, we're going to play hard, whatever happens, I'm not going to get mad at you if you don't score a goal, right? We're going to enjoy the experience. The kids are picking up that negativity and that toxicity and taking it away with them. Chris, you talked about it, how the parents can negatively impact whether their kid gets selected, but their parents, what is therapy all about, right? Like 90% of therapy, like your mom and your dad, right? Like, let's talk about mom. So if that was the relationship that you had growing up, that you're being forced to do something you don't want to do, or you're thinking that your parents want you to be better than you actually are, or you feel that your worth as a human being is tied up with some externality, like some extracurricular activity that maybe you don't want to do, or maybe you can't do, or maybe you feel like you're going to fail at. Those are some really heavy things, right? That our kids are dealing with at a time that their brain is not fully developed in order to be able to deal with it. So Lee, you did a great synopsis at the beginning of when we started talking about this chapter, like the power that we have, the responsibility we have as adults around young people, and making sure that they know that they're much more than a hockey player, a lacrosse player, or a violinist or whatever, and that their worth is not connected to that. It's just something we do, right? It's something we have to do something, and let's do this. It's fun, and it'll teach us some lessons. But they are more than enough. And even though we think that, right? Like if you told that to a parent, like you are making your kid feel bad about themselves the way you're acting, they would be crushed, right? But they don't understand necessarily that their words or even their body language has such power to a child, right? So sometimes it's too late when they actually realize that.
What is the power as a parent of just telling your kid, I want you to be a good person? And then how many of us actually say that?
That's it.
Right. And it goes such a long way. I'll just say this, Tim and Philip, statistics show that, because I think a lot of parents stand off going, well, my kid won't want to talk to me. Just to put this out there, statistics show that if your kid is in real mental strife, they will answer you. All right. The statistics show that if your kid is seriously, depressed and considering horrible things, I'll just put it that way, they will speak to you if you ask them because they want to. They're actually waiting for you to ask. It's the parents who don't ask or don't approach their kids that tend to have problems. But, I have these moments all the time with my kids and even my parents now who are elderly of I'll think something in my head, a thought, and I'll tell myself, you should call your mom right now and say that. Like, I want my mom to know I feel this way about her. Same thing with my kids. I want my kid to know, hey, I love you and I'm proud of you. It goes so much further than we realize, and not enough people do it. This is generally in your life too. Like I would say, thank your barista, right? We don't do that enough.
Yeah. Well, this is the last thing I'll get off my soapbox on it after this.
No, the show is your soapbox today, sir. That's what we're here for.
Your guys is showing why I love what you all are doing is it's hockey is just the vehicle, right? And we could be doing anything. We could be playing tiddlywinks and we could be learning lessons from it and learning how to interact with each other and how to deal with each other and how to be kind and how to, stay focused and develop and work through trials and tribulations. So hockey is just the vehicle that we've all chosen for whatever reason that we like, we think it's fun. But it's really life lessons, right? So, and I agree, Lee, too, about your kids they want to talk to you even if they don't show it, right? And I talk about it a lot as a teacher, like the slow burn, right? I think I can't remember if it was Lou Holtz or what coach was, they were saying, oh, you have a great group of players. And he said, I'll show you in 20 years. I'll tell you in 20 years that they're a great group of players. So that's what it is, right? It's like, what I'm saying to you right now is if I'm talking to a child, I'd say it all the time, like, you'll understand when you're older. I just want to give it to you right now, even if you don't get it. And then when they're my age, right, I understand what that coach is saying, right? I understand why they did that. Like you said, the discipline, they were trying to help me learn that actions have consequences. And right now it's a safe thing where we can learn that actions have consequences in the realm of hockey, so that hopefully they don't have to learn it when they're 40 and they're married and they have a job. And if they lose that job or make a mistake and, the marriage crumbles, like, they can learn it in a safe space. And then when things really matter, they have those things ingrained. So again, that's the end of my soapbox.
Fantastic take. And again, unfortunately, Tim, we're out of time, but again, unbelievably fantastic episode. But before we go and give final thoughts, if you're listening, the book is called Youth Sports, How to Play the Game, a Family Guidebook by Tim Cook. I'm holding it up for those of you watching right now. It's on Amazon. It is an excellent read. And I'm going to say it one more time. It's extremely consumable. These are just great reminders. They're chapters you'll read over and over again. And probably the best part, Tim, as Christy said, is these actionable items at the end. You really make us critically think. And again, I have a feeling we're going to borrow topics from this book for this show.
Please do.
Yeah, we'll have you on again. Mike, Christy, any final words before I close it out?
No, this book is truly is a great family guidebook. It's so well researched as well written. And you're going to relate to so many of these chapters. You're going to say, oh my gosh, I'm in this situation right now. What do I do? Here's what to do. It'll kind of help you, find your way and lead and be on a better path. It'll put you in the right direction. So Tim, thank you so much for writing this and for reaching out to us, because it's going to help a lot of families.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo both these guys. Just Tim, I think it's great to have that, concise ability to look in, say, oh, geez, I have a little, I love taking like the snippets that like you write. Christy's book was great too. Like just having the little things that you can say to a parent. Like if you give him like the little lead, there's another book out like Pee-wee's. It's a year in the life of Pee-wee's. From
Cohen's book. Yeah,
and he's great. And I love taking like just the one line of it that I can bring to a parent, like, oh yeah, I just read about that. You should read that book. Just like, hey, this would be a good book for you to look up. But and I'm not saying like you need it, but you probably should read it. But I think they're really great little ways that we can slowly, get into our parents, without so much like calling them out. And and having, I don't know, it's a good book to have. Probably every rink should have it laying on the counter, at the pro shop. So when you're waiting for your skates to get sharpened, you get to thumb through it or something. But I think it's just it's always great reminders. It's great to have you on, just again, reinforcing the stuff that we talk about all the time. And I guess the mission now is, how do we get outside that circle and, reach the people that really, I think, need it for their kids more than anything.
Yeah. Thank you all for taking the time to read the book and to hype it up. I really appreciate it. And to talk to you. I think what you all are doing is really important. And I think it's valuable, right? And I think that's kind of what the point of life is, to have a valuable, purposeful life. And what you all are doing is really helpful to whether it reaches 100,000 or 1 million or 10 million, or you know what I mean? It helped me to talk to you all today. So thank you so much.
No, thank you, Tim. You've been a fantastic guest. We'll have to have you back on again for a future discussion. But that is going to do it for this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Remember, you can hear all of our episodes at ourkidsplayhockey.com. And make sure you jump on that website and join our Facebook group, Our Kids Play Hockey. It's a private group. You have to answer 2 questions. They're yes or no questions to get in. But the conversations kind of continue there. We've had a lot of people joining that for the last few weeks. So for Tim Cook, Christy Casciano Burns, and Mike Finelli, I'm Lee Elias. Make sure to pick up your copy of Youth Sports How to Play the Game, a family guidebook by Tim Cook. Just search for that online. You'll find it right away. And we'll see you on the next edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Take care, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.